Welcome in to another episode of Behind the Glass Sports. I'm Aiden Dollins, joined as always by Hardy Graham, Mr. Will Miller. Couple more assignments, guys. Couple more. He's almost there. JCM 499 gets his attention tonight, not the good people of the entire internet. That's just our attention. I hope it's enough for you. Hardy, how's your evening going on this wonderful Wednesday?
Things are going well. This Hurricane Raphael that's kind of brewing down in the Caribbean appears to be going more west of my area. So things are definitely looking up from that perspective. But, just excited about what we got to see last night with the first college football playoff rankings. Got to see Alabama in that field, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But, things just generally speaking are going well. I'm aside from waking up in the afternoon and the sun being down, but
That gets tough to grapple with.
the next couple of months are going to be rough, but we'll be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Done it before, so just part of the process.
Absolutely. Speaking of the process, the Tide is attempting to work Caitlin DeBoer's rendition of Nick Saban's process in the 9th showing this season against the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. Night kickoff.
Night kickoff, 6:30 p.m. on ABC is where you will find this game.
Should be on CBS, but
hey, the media rights deals have already been signed. They'll keep cutting those checks as long as the SEC continues to perform. But yeah, night game in Baton Rouge. Caitlin DeBoer's first trip down to the Bayou. It's college game day. This feels to me like a playoff game. Both of these teams are 6-2 at this moment in time. Winner has a chance to, make their own case to be in the college football playoff bracket. Loser, pretty much it seals the deal that they're going to be left out of the field this year. Some people might not like to hear that, but it is the case. 3 losses would almost guarantee you being knocked out as long as all of these other teams continue to just have 1 loss or even stay undefeated. But right now, Alabama is in the field, so they control their own destiny as much as anybody else.
Absolutely. If Alabama goes out and has, exclusively struggle wins to, close out the season, including against Mercer and the, quite frankly, terrible Auburn Tigers, if those are struggle wins and they struggle against LSU, then I think that's the only scenario in which Alabama gets left out of the playoff if they win out. If you look like hell and other people below you are playing lights out football, they're going to leapfrog you. But you're right. If you win this game, all you have to do really is halfway beat Mercer and Auburn the way you're supposed to. And quite frankly, you're probably not just going to make the playoff. You're probably going to host a home playoff game because even if Alabama is the 9th, 10th, 11th best team in the country, let's be honest, Hardy, the people that are in charge of making sure everybody gets their money at the end of the day are going to make sure that they just give them a little bit of consideration and bump them into that home playoff spot because of the money involved.
Yeah, it would definitely not surprise me. You look at some of the teams that are ahead of Alabama that could definitely move around. Notre Dame still has to play, Army, Virginia, USC, Florida State. I don't know. The best team on that schedule is probably Army. USC has some offensive firepower, but they've been miserable this season under Lincoln Riley. They're really struggling the first year in the Big Ten. Indiana.
I got to give them credit, though. They are occasionally playing some decent defense.
Yeah, that is fair, but the offense is not as high-powered as it has been, so they just keep losing these games. But, yeah, Notre Dame not super likely to move. BYU, they've already beaten K-State. They'll, very likely chance that they make it into the Big 12 championship game. And if they happen to lose that game, I feel like the committee would do them some favors, possibly put them in as a at-large bid, just depending on who they lose that game to. Miami has some losable games left on the schedule.
Miami is legit though. That's
Yeah, I mean, they're that offense is very high powered, but I
they
mean,
look 9-0.
yeah, they didn't the past couple of the first 4 or 5 games of the season, but
That's
past 2 or
fair.
3, they've looked really, really good. Um, Penn State has Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland. I mean, a lot of these teams don't really have a very good strength of schedule remaining on their roster and that or remaining on their schedule, and that's something that could definitely be a detriment to this team. Um, Georgia has a chance theoretically to lose to Ole Miss and Tennessee, but I mean, I don't. Lane Kiffin
Depends on
has
which
not.
one of those teams shows up.
Yeah, but I haven't seen Lane Kiffin perform well in big time situations. That game going to be 2:30 kickoff in Oxford this weekend. Um, it would be a
Did
huge
I,
win for it would be a huge win for Ole Miss, but I don't think that team deserves to be in the playoff as much as a LSU or a Alabama, just based on some of the opponents they've beaten. LSU beating them head to head.
yeah.
Um, so some things will definitely shake out here in the at the top of the rankings, but it honestly, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if we get to the end of the season and there's barely any movement at all.
No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, there is a lot more parity in college football, but usually by this point in the season, those teams that are in the
Usually,
top 10 range, they're unless they've got, one of their more daunting battles left in the season still on the schedule, they're probably playing the football they're going to play for the rest of the year, barring injuries, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, well, Indiana does have two very real chances to lose these next couple of weeks, playing Michigan and Ohio State. So that's but they have looked like a really high quality football team.
They really have.
People probably do not want to admit that, but very real shot that because if they win either one of those games, that pretty much locks them up as with a spot in this playoff bracket. But let's turn our
I
attention.
think if you don't mind pausing there for a second, I think that there needs to be a greater conversation had around Kurt Signetti and the things that are happening at Indiana by Alabama fans. Um,
Oh yeah,
I,
I
under,
mean,
I understand that it was a long time ago that he was with Nick Saban for 10 minutes in a somewhat low ranking position. I firmly believe, as I watch that team, as I watch their players with the media, as I listen to their coach, and you just kind of listen to people talk about that program and how things have been there this year. I firmly believe that it would be foolish to assume that the next closest thing to Nick Saban was going to come out of Alabama just because that's where he was. Um, if you're watching Kurt Signetti in Indiana football right now, that's that's the closest thing to Nick Saban on a sideline this season, and I don't see any reason why that's not going to continue.
yeah, he's been well. The only reason it wouldn't continue at Indiana is if he gets hired for a bigger, better job, which is all entirely possible. When he was the head coach of James Madison, led them to, I guess, would have been back-to-back Sun Belt title appearances, but because of some weird rules with joining the FBS, he couldn't
Because of a
participate.
bunch of crap.
He couldn't participate in those. He couldn't. I mean, they were one of the best group of five teams in college football last season and the year before. Um, they've been really good. James Madison has been good this season, probably not as good as they were last year. But he moves over to Indiana and turns a team that pretty much had one blip year where they were a pretty good football team under Michael Penix leading the helm right there. Um,
Right.
but aside from that, they've not really been a high quality football team. I mean, they're a basketball blue blood. And that's what really matters in that state more so than football. But he's been able to go in there and really turn things around, and it's been awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And like if you like football being done right, if you like watching, these young men get to go through a program that is actually kind of transforming them into better human beings because of what's being asked of them and the discipline that is being required by the coach. To me, I enjoy watching that team more. Even if they're not as good of a football team. I just enjoy it more. So, you know, we'll see. I just wanted to make that quick aside real quick though. Should we maybe look at the game itself, Hardy? Um,
Yeah, we can
what
turn
might
our
happen
attention there.
between the sidelines?
Yeah, we could definitely turn our attention there because, um, both of these teams have shown the ability, Alabama and LSU shown the ability to have some crazy high-powered offenses with some, really awesome receiving weapons. Um, both teams have struggled to run the ball a bit at times. Both teams have struggled on defense at times.
Yep.
This game could very easily turn into some type of shootout, um, you know,
It
barring
could
that.
also very quickly turn into a 17-10 final score.
Yes, and it's when you play a night game in Baton Rouge, things tend to get wild. I'm sure you saw the end of the LSU Ole Miss game that they played earlier there this season. Just a really fantastic finish. It causes problems you know, for offenses, for defenses. That crowd noise definitely gets to you. Um, Jalen Milroe went and played in Knoxville 2 weeks ago or
Didn't
3 weeks
go.
ago, and he did not really look good with that crowd. Hopefully, he has been able to learn from that experience because this LSU crowd that will essentially get all day and night to liquor up and get ready to go into Tiger Stadium will, of course, be one of the loudest crowds. Has been the loudest crowd uh, in the country, especially when you essentially have a playoff game on the line.
I have a theory as to why it's so loud in there. I don't know if any of the good people watching the show right now have ever tried to shout across a swamp as opposed to a field. There's a lot more sound deadening in a swamp. These people have to make it happen. All right. Naturally. They're just kind of raised this way. Okay. They're just bred better. They're louder people. So no, it is going to be a problem. And yeah, Hardy, he looked bad. He didn't look like a starting caliber quarterback in the Southeastern Conference against Tennessee. And quite frankly, there's been other games this season where he hasn't, especially the second half against Georgia. Um, this LSU
Yeah,
defense is going to bring pressure. This LSU defense is going to probably be forcing him to throw the ball quickly enough that I get the sense he's going to do the target Ryan Williams 23 times thing again. And
yeah.
I think as soon as he starts to do that, for all the things we can say about, convicted by the court of common sense, kid killer Brian Kelly, the guy knows how to get in a quarterback's face and he knows how to coach a mean defense. Um, is there a point, Hardy, that you think that maybe Jalen Milroe gets benched if he's playing poorly enough? And what would that point be? And how does LSU get him there?
I don't think Jalen Milroe will get benched. I think at this point in the season, it's like he would have to perform at some, otherworldly bad levels um, for him to be benched. I mean, like 3 picks in the first half or something like that, which is all entirely possible, by the way. But he would have to get them pretty deep into a hole. Um, Texas A&M, LSU went on the road, faced them 2 weeks ago. That was LSU's last game. Marcel Reed stepped in, had 70 yards passing. Um, A&M was able to get it done, really attack the interior of that LSU defense, rushing for 242 yards that game. Alabama needs to establish the run game. I know we've been harping on it. Every Bama fan from the Atlantic to the Pacific has been harping on it, saying run the damn ball. And, you know, we got to see a little bit of that 2 weeks ago, the last time Alabama was out on the field, and things opened up immensely, took a lot of the pressure off of Jalen Milroe, allowed him to complete some of the easier throws, get into a rhythm more. And that's just something that they are going to have to do, especially because that LSU interior, while there is some talent there, they have not been very consistent up front. USC was able to just gash them that whole game week one. Like I said, A&M was able to do it. That's how they've lost their 2 games. Teams, just really hitting them hard inside. And so, if you try to get into a throwing match with a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, who's going to sit there and probably end up throwing the ball 50 times this game, um, there's a real shot you're going to lose. So it's just a matter of really controlling the tempo of the game. LSU's offense likes to move quickly, not as quickly as an Ole Miss or Tennessee, but they do like to move the ball quickly down the field. They got weapons on the outside, so these young defensive backs are going to have to step up and really make plays because Kane Womack is going to put them in single coverage for a lot of the game, whether some of us agree with that or not.
You know what? They played really damn good defense last week. I think we gotta, maybe be open to the idea that this is gonna start to turn. You know, they're gonna win these one-on-ones more consistently. It's part of playing an entire season. You're gonna be a better player by the end of the season than you were at the beginning. So, always got to leave hope that that's the thing that's going to play out. But I think you're right. This is a team where if you're not willing to make an adjustment in your coverage on the back end to maybe, shade an extra safety to one side or the other, I think that if you're not willing to make those adjustments, this could get out of hand quickly if LSU is able to hit the things they're able to hit. Something I'm noticing here, though, kind of in support of that interior being the thing you need to attack, just pound Justice Haynes and Richard Young up the middle, Jam Miller, all three of them back to back to back. Just let them stay fresh. They have one defensive. I understand that defensive tackle is a different frame of human than it was back in the day. They have one defensive tackle over 6'4", and they have two over 300 pounds. One of them, the one guy that's actually big, is a true freshman. I don't know how much he's playing. I should look into that. But you look at Alabama's offensive line and the size along at Hardy, they shouldn't have an issue.
Yeah, shouldn't have an issue. The best linebacker on their team, Harold Perkins, out for the season with an injury. He's a very dynamic player. Will probably end up being a first-round draft pick this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or at a bare minimum, a second-round draft pick. So they won't have to worry about him being in there causing problems. This Alabama offense was able to run the ball pretty effectively last year against LSU. And when they got into a shootout in Bryant-Denny Stadium, they were able to hold off some of that extremely high-powered LSU offense led by Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Neighbors. They don't have that level of offense this season, but they are still very capable of putting up a lot of points. So it's just going to be about playing assignment football. Nussmeier is not going to be as much of a running threat, something that has, for one reason or another, bothered Alabama defenses for the last 20 years. So that threat will not be there as much, but you're still just going to have to play really disciplined football. Hopefully we can get some more info on some of the injury news. Guys like Keon Saab, if they're going to be back to a 100% by the time they step on the field on Saturday. That's going to be a big key to winning this game.
Didn't he straight up break his foot? I know his foot's injured, but didn't he straight up break it?
I'm not sure exactly. But he decided to play through that Tennessee game.
Yeah.
And if it was with a broken foot, I don't want to sit here and say that's poor mismanagement, but it's just poor management on his part and the team's part. But you try to play through as many injuries as possible. Guys are going to have to step up. Malachi Moore, if Keon Saab is not able to play, he's going to have to be really good. LT Overton has kind of stepped up as the best edge rusher on this team.
Yeah.
He's been really good at setting that edge, more so as a rush defender than a straight up pass rusher, but he's been, pretty quality there as well. It's just going to be about playing assignment football, getting in Garrett Nussmeier's face, just causing him problems, and then, hitting home whenever you do get pressure on him, at least a couple of times this game, make him feel that pressure, make him know that he's going to get hit is going to be a big part of getting him out of his rhythm, because when he gets going, he can look like one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC.
And all the credit in the world to him, because this is somebody that, I don't think I looked at any piece of tape from him the last handful of seasons and thought, oh, he's going to be something soon, but you can see that he's a coach's kid in the way, when he gets in that rhythm, the preparation really shines through. And, if he can continue to show that to a degree, he's going to get a shot in the NFL, and he might actually really do something with it. Devontae Smith, I feel like, is going to be a factor in this game. Now, I know he's been banged up a little bit. So I don't know how much of him we're going to see as opposed to other games. But to me, a lot of times the defense has sort of gone the way that he goes, it seems. I've felt like in the games that we've lost this season, in the second half of the Georgia game, when he's playing well, he's playing well. And all the credit in the world to him. He's doing a really good job when he does things right, and the defense is effective. It seems oftentimes that when he gets out of position, or makes a mistake, it gets taken advantage of, maybe at a disproportionate rate compared to other guys. Why that is, I won't offer an explanation. It's kind of how I feel watching the team, but it seems to be going that way. So, with the consistency factor, again, this is going to be a thing. Kalen DeBoer, Kane Womack, you've had this guy for 9 weeks now of in-season football. How have you brought him along? How have you helped with the consistency? And, what has he been doing to prepare for this, and be better, not missing open field tackles as much, not being out of position?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be just about staying disciplined in all of your reads and everything like that. Um, you know, I think a guy that's been really really good as kind of a edge rusher, outside linebacker, Quaresol. When he's been on the field, he has been kind of an X factor on that defense. Got a pick 2 weeks ago against
Mhm.
Missouri. Really caused Drew Pine some problems during that game. He can definitely stand out as a premier player on this team. The weeks that he was out, that defense just didn't really look the same. So I think as long as you know, please, please God, don't let any of these guys get hurt because that one injury can definitely knock everything out of balance. But as long as some of these guys can stay healthy and we can continue to rotate players in and out of that defensive backfield and on that defensive line, I think things are going to be pretty solid, especially with the leadership we have in that defensive interior with those two starting middle linebackers, Deontay Lawson and Jihad Campbell.
Yeah. All right. Again, we talk about the consistency. You want to see maybe a little more consistency from those guys, but that is probably fair of the entire defense. And they've still got 3 games to show it before we have to start playing games that count properly. So, Hardy,
Yeah.
I'm wondering here. I think I know which way you think this game is going to go. I'm wondering if you're willing to venture a score prediction. This is to me, it feels like just pulling a number out of a hat for this one. This could go so many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. So you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for
Um,
it.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think with some of the struggles we've seen Alabama had this season, Kalen DeBoer's first trip down to Baton Rouge. The last time the Crimson Tide headed down there, they lost in a wild overtime finish. Um, I think
Had to bring that up.
this, yes, I know. I mean, it's not what I'm really hoping for, but I do think Alabama drops this game, uh, maybe 30-21. LSU is able to make more plays early on in this game, get a few more points up before Alabama can really start getting things going, and that's how Alabama loses this game.
I hope you're right because I think they lose this game. I'm really worried it's not going to be that close. I think that's the thing I'm the most worried about, and I think I'm actually leaning towards it goes that way. I kind of have this impending sense that this is a wheels come off the wagon game. Um,
It could be
unfor-
it could be for either team,
it
quite
really could
frankly.
be. No, that's
I mean,
more than
yeah,
fair.
because LSU, they were riding high, undefeated, top of the conference standings. They went to Kyle Field 2 weeks ago and really got, they blew that game. They were ahead throughout that first half, and then second half, A&M just stormed back. Marcel Reed threw I think like 2 passes
Yeah,
in that game, and they rushed for 245 yards and kind of whooped up on LSU in that second half. So it's very real that that game caused some problems in the LSU locker room, and they're not going to be able to turn it around. But I think with some of the guys they have on that team, some of that veteran experience, and a guy like Brian Kelly who's played in, maybe not has performed to his best in some big games, but has been there,
yeah,
with real chances to win a lot of big games. Um, he's going to want this one a lot.
yeah.
And I think this one matters more so for his future at LSU than it matters for Kalen DeBoer's future at Alabama.
Well, maybe in reference to the whole getting fired by your athletic director thing. I think I agree with you. This one, if it's a wheels come off the wagon game for LSU, Brian Kelly's been there for a few years. They've paid him a lot of money, and I mean, let's be honest, going 10-2 with consistency, really damn good. It's the Southeastern Conference. You're the
Yeah.
LSU Tigers. They fired Les Miles for that. They fired Ed Orgeron for worse, but they'll get rid of you, Brian. I don't think there's
Yeah.
any
I mean, well,
question that won't happen.
10-2 can pretty much get you in the playoff, as long as one of your losses wasn't to some,
Right.
really, really horrible team.
Like
Um,
Vanderbilt or something.
well, they should be ranked, quite
Well,
frankly. But
yes, they
we can,
should.
I mean, we can get into that here in a minute. But I mean, but
That's an absurdity that they aren't.
yeah, but whatever.
But for Alabama, the thing I worry about as far as like the status of the coach, if this is a wheels come off the wagon game for them, which I mean, like I really do think this could be like 34-10, and like Austin
It's
Mack plays the last quarter and a half. Like it might be really
that would
bad.
be wild.
Yeah, or him or Ty Simpson, I guess. I worry that if this is a wheels come off the wagon game for DeBoer, it's not that the pressure is going to come from Greg Byrne. It's that you're going to see your recruiting class fall apart. That's
Yeah.
your first. This is your first year, and you're allowed to stumble. You're allowed to be 10-2. You're allowed to not win a national championship. You have to look like a legitimate competitor for these
Yeah.
kids to stay with you with all the other options they have now.
I would tend to agree with you, but we've seen the head coach over at Lee County put together some top 5 recruiting classes
That's
with
insane.
how bad they've been. I'm not saying it's going to be everything. Players that want to win championships are going to go to programs that want to win championships. That is very true. But with NIL and a bunch of other things like that, it's not as common per se to really hold on to a recruiting class at all.
Yeah.
Players are flipping and decommitting and doing all of this stuff, pretty much just kind of waiting, trying to get their number up, in terms of how much the team is going to give them to sign that contract and show up on campus day one. Um, I don't think the recruiting class, you might have a guy or two make a flip, but I think the thing that you know it won't be Greg Byrne, it won't be the recruits. It'll probably be the fan base that looked up and they have seen Nick Saban win 10 games for the past 17 years, and they look up and it's the first year with their new head coach, and they are like, "What the hell? We lost. We had 3 losses this season. 2 of them came before November for the first time since
What was
Nick
that? Oh
Saban's
four?
first. I think it was his first year.
Oh, I thought it went back further than that. The before
It
November
might.
bit.
I mean, it very well might have. Saban didn't have a 9-win season. He won at least 10 games in every single year, and DeBoer
Except
would
for
have
year
the
one.
chance. Yeah, except for year one, and of course DeBoer would have the chance to get to 10 wins if they drop the LSU game and then play in a bowl game. But it's there has there have been some very high quality coaches that have taken over for good programs. Kirby Smart taken over for Mark Richt. They went 8-5 his first season. It wasn't a immediately pretty turnaround, but he got that ship back
If
going, back
if I'm not
sailing.
mistaken, Rick had been 10-2 the year before Kirby came in.
Yeah, that is. I
Yeah.
believe that is correct. They were a very very good football team. And Kalen DeBoer has kind of a similar challenge with keeping the Alabama team consistent and then raising them up just back up one step, because that's all he really has to do. It is a big step to get
Yes.
them from a good football program to a great, or a great to an elite. But it's not like he's having to climb an entire mountain of steps like he was at Washington to get them into the college football playoff and really flip that team around. I think he can definitely do it, but losing 3 games in your first season after what Alabama fans have experienced and what this team on paper was coming in will definitely draw some Twitter fingers saying that he should be gone.
Yeah. Well, when we listen to people on Twitter, craziness happens.
Craziness happens. Just
I
don't
don't know if
just don't
any I don't
listen
know
to
if
it.
anybody turned on a television last night, but there was a little bit of craziness, and I'm blaming Twitter. I'm going back 14 years and I'm blaming the Bird app. All right. Jack Dorsey, this is your fault. Fix it. moving on. The Washington Commanders are 7-2.
Hey, congratulations to the Washington Commanders. Congratulations to new Commanders corner Marshawn Lattimore, 4-time Pro Bowler with the New Orleans Saints, getting traded, dumping some of his huge contract to the Commanders. Commanders trying to make that push to a Super Bowl that we've seen in the past, however many years. You either win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, or it's a veteran quarterback taking less money or a guy on a rookie deal. Those are kind of the four ways things happen. Commanders are trying to take advantage of Jaden Daniels being as cheap as he is ever going to be, with as much talent around him possibly as he's ever really going to have. They'll be drafting in the later. They'll be
I think
drafting in the
so.
later half. They'll be drafting in the later half of the first round for much of the rest of his career, ideally.
We've kind of done that my whole life. We've kind of suckered ourselves into being 7-9 and picking
Yeah, hey,
19th. It's why the roster's been so mediocre. You know that. You feel that.
yeah, you're speaking my language, man.
Yep.
Drafting somewhere between 13 and 18 has been hell for me. Just,
And,
but yeah,
and I don't know why anybody taking between 13 and 18 is going to have a worse career than the guy taking at 29. Even if the guy taking at 29 is going to a team that would have been a top pick.
Yeah, exactly. I don't necessarily understand it. But
It's
for
juju.
whatever reason. Well, it's that horrible area where you're kind of taking swings on guys that are probably should be drafted in the 20s, but you're like, I don't want them to fall to that team, or I don't want them to fall that far. I think that it's like our scouts have done a really good job with this, or we really need to address this position.
Yeah.
And so we're drafting the highest available defensive end, but that defensive end is rated like the number 28 guy in the class, and you're drafting 14, which is kind of what the Saints did for 5 years.
And by the way, every other 31 teams has a front office full of people that they pay a lot of money to be really good at their jobs too. And they know you have that going on, and no, they're not really willing to give you much to move up.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to hit on some draft picks. Is all it really comes down to. The deal. All of the things involved with that Marshawn Lattimore trade. They Saints send Lattimore.
Do you want to go through it? No, this is really good. I'm ready to build a statue to Adam Peters already. This is so good.
Saints send Marshawn Lattimore and a 5th round pick. Commanders send back over a 3rd, 4th, and a 6th.
Oh, it's better. It's better. You want to do the draft math with me?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Good. If you go to Tankathon right now, all right, if the season ended today, the Saints are picking 3rd overall. The Commanders are picking 29th. All right. Now, if you'll allow me to take you, a little back, about 10, 12 weeks ago, Adam Peters, for whatever reason, looked at Jahan Dotson and said, dude, you kind of suck. And he sent him to Philadelphia for a 3rd round draft pick. All right. The 3rd round draft pick that the Commanders got from Philadelphia was not Philadelphia's 3rd round draft pick. It was Miami's. If the season were to end today, according to Tankathon, Miami is picking 8th. Okay. In the language of this deal, the Commanders did not send a 3rd round pick. They sent their 3rd round pick, not the one they got from Philadelphia. Okay. So that's pick 8 versus pick 29. All right. They sent to New Orleans the 6th round pick they had gotten for John Ridgeway, who was going to get cut anyway. So it's basically a free pick. I'm sorry. That's the way I'm looking at it here. It's basically a free pick. All right. They sent a 4th round pick that was their own, and they got back a 5th round pick that was the Saints. Pick 29 in round 4, pick 3 in round 5. That's like 6 spaces, 6 draft picks. So for 6 draft picks in the middle of 6 picks worth of position in the middle of the draft, a free 6th round pick, and less than Jahan Dotson, technically, you got Marshawn Lattimore.
You get Marshawn Lattimore. You get a guy that has been, in the upper echelon of corners in the NFL for the past, I guess, 7, 8 seasons since he was drafted in 2017.
When he's healthy.
Yeah, one defensive rookie of the year, four-time Pro Bowler. Uh, has been my favorite player on the New Orleans Saints since he was drafted. Um, has been really, really good. Dealing with some hamstring stuff. I think it's mostly business decisions. The Devontae Adam type. Hey, my hamstring. I don't really. He's pretty much saying I don't want to play for this garbage organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
Which y'all have an affinity for letting people get away with. Mike Thomas stubbed his toe 4 years ago, and you're still paying him $30 million a year to sit on the bench.
no, he got cut this offseason. But we're paying his dead money the next 2 or 3 years, something like that.
That's so much worse. You're paying him to sit on the couch now.
Exactly. Sit on the couch and tweet about Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. And he does that job better than anybody I've ever seen in my life. We'll get into
He didn't hold
that
back.
whole. What?
He didn't hold back. He said it with his whole
No,
chest.
he let it all out. But the Lattimore trade was, even though the Saints didn't necessarily get the best thing that they could have got, they got more picks. And for a
Yes.
team that has been in salary cap hell, has been putting off the rebuild for since Drew Brees decided to retire, what you need is to acquire. Not everyone's going to send you a first round pick or a second round pick, especially at the trade deadline. Um, teams are going out there and trading for DeAndre Hopkins for like a 6th-round pick. I mean, you have to look at the landscape of everything. And so what you get for him, obviously you look at him and you're like, he's the best player on our defense. He should be worth more. The injury stuff is definitely a real concern. I think he's
Yeah.
going to, playing for a real football team, definitely going to try a little bit harder. And he will get a chance to return to the Superdome December 15th when the Commanders come to visit. I'm sure he will be greeted with a warm welcome because he did not leave in free agency. He was traded. The semantics of that. He didn't request to trade, make it very
No.
public, all of that stuff.
No, he was a good soldier. I mean, if we're
Yeah,
assuming that hamstring thing is legitimate, then he was a very good soldier for y'all during a rough
yeah,
time.
yeah. He's been very, very good. And I think he will absolutely help a Commanders defensive backfield that has kind
Yeah.
of struggled at points this season. He could be tasked with stepping in and just saying, "Hey, Lattimore, you're responsible for this side of the field. All of our other defensive backs can shade over a little bit to help some of the young guys on the opposite side of the field." And so, big piece for the Commanders in trying to go win a Super Bowl, win a couple of playoff games. Um,
Because right now
Saints
the
get
defense is not going to make a legitimate postseason push. You've got, and this is the NFL playoff seeding. The Bucks are 4-5. They're
yeah,
probably the second best or best team in the NFC. Balls haven't bounced their way. They've been in close games. They've got a head coach that could do a little better on the game management thing, but they're a damn good
yeah,
football team. And so that might be who you get in the wild card round if you go in at the 2 seed, at this point.
yeah.
And then
It's very possible.
if you don't have a defense that can actually stop Baker Mayfield and whatever, guys they sign off the street to catch balls from him, then it's a first round out. And to your fan base that is right now just feeling an absolute fever. I mean, the Washington Commanders are 7-2. It has
Yes.
not happened in my lifetime. It last happened in November of 96. I got on the planet in January of 97. All right.
Maybe this is your
This,
fault. Maybe their string of being, miserable has been all about your time on Earth.
it
Um,
does. It
it's
totally has everything to do with that. No billionaire bought the team in 1999.
no,
Aiden Dallins was
absolutely,
born.
absolutely not. There was 2 years.
No.
There was two
Yeah.
years. I mean, you could have gotten
Champ
that.
Bailey was there and they still sucked.
Yeah.
Champ Bailey was
No.
there with Darryl Green and they still sucked.
There's an argument to be made that Marshawn Lattimore is the best corner to play in Washington since Champ Bailey. Obviously, he's not Champ Bailey, but he,
I'm
who
going to
would you
refute
put?
that.
Who would you put above him?
Fred Smoot was excellent here. Sean Springs is worthy of being in the conversation, but he's not actually. But Fred Smoot, if his whole career looked like his time in Washington, would be in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, that's I will take your word for it. I'm not super familiar with Mr. Smoot. Um,
Big old number
you know,
27.
a little played 9 years in
Yeah.
the National Football League.
Started
I mean,
with
he played.
us, went to Minnesota, came back to us. Or he started with Minnesota, came to us, went back to Minnesota, came back to us. I forget.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, those first couple of years, definitely very high quality. Um, there's an argument to be made. Lattimore does have 4 Pro
Yeah.
Bowls and a Defensive Rookie of the Year trophy
No,
in
it's
his
fair.
home, but you can argue as much as you want.
I
Turning
don't really
to
want to.
turning to the Saints, the rebuild is underway. Um, Dennis Allen, the famous Hitler Dead uh, newspaper that everybody's seen. It's that people like post whenever some figurehead or whatever happens to pass, gets fired or whatever. Uh, that was going around Saints Twitter. Um,
As it should.
Dennis Allen is not Hitler. Um,
He is to Mike
but,
Thomas.
but yeah, to Mike Thomas, he definitely is. But as a Saints fan, he was, people look at him, and obviously, I don't think he was ever really the right hire. He has been one of the worst. He has been actually the worst coach in NFL history in terms of winning percentage. 4 coaches that have coached as a head coach, and
Like 70
75 or
games?
yeah, I think it's 75. Bad, really god awful, not good, horrible. Probably shouldn't have gotten the job in the first place. He is
Well,
gone now.
and like let's put that in perspective. Like, when you sent me that piece of data, his win percentage was 1/3. He lost
Yes,
2 more games since then before he got fired.
yes,
He didn't even win 1/3 of the games he coached in, and you let him coach for like 4 or 5 seasons.
yes. Saints let him coach for 4 seasons, and he was the head coach of the Raiders before then. That was just
Wasn't that just an interim deal though?
no. He was the head. He was the head coach. Um,
Ooh.
the first 2 or 3 years Derek Carr was in Oakland, when they were in Oakland, um,
Oh.
and they were really really bad when they were like one of the worst football teams in the National Football
Yes.
League. But he is gone now. There's still lots of steps to be taken. This team is still very much under the cap or over the cap. Um, the Lattimore deal, the agreement with it, the Saints have they get a $30 million hole burned into their shirt for next season in dead money that they're paying Marshawn Lattimore, but it needed to be done. Yes,
I didn't
yes,
build the statue now.
yes. Um,
Now. I don't care if he
there,
takes a snap.
yeah, no, there, you know, people look at it. Obviously, it's not going to look great on paper. There are a couple of contracts that still need to be,
Yeah.
checked off the list. Um, Brian Ramczyk reportedly has lost like 70 pounds um, since the start of the season. That knee
Okay, so
stuff,
he's retiring.
that is what it's more so pointing to. I don't see him wanting to put that weight back on. Cam Jordan hasn't recorded a sack in 16 games. Could be time for him to hang it up. Demario Davis is 35 years old.
Shout out.
Um, Shout out to him. He does not miss games. He missed his first game as a member of the New Orleans Saints like 2 weeks ago. Um,
Iron
he is
Man.
he fights through everything. The Taysom Hill
And shout out to that guy. I a very close friend of mine happened to marry like his childhood best friend. And like everything I've heard from Adam, about Demario Davis, like
yeah,
I'm kind of
fantastic human
surprised he
being.
missed 2 games at all ever. Like that is a
Yeah,
high character, excellent human, really driven man.
yeah, absolutely agree. The Taysom Hill contract is still bad. It was bad when they signed it.
It's
Um,
competitive with Albert Hainsworth.
it's it's only getting bad the more games that Taysom Hill misses. and the offense can't do anything unless Taysom Hill is on the field. So all things come together in a perfect circle of suck. Um, the Derek Carr contract, please don't look at it. Please don't look at what the Saints owe him this year and next year, because you will shudder. You will feel pain that uh, every Saints fan will be feeling for the next 2 seasons. They're just going to have to suck it up. Um, Ideally, you embrace the tank this season. You try to not win games, and then next year you try to not win football games. Um,
That's
oh yeah,
dude, you
oh
undersold
yeah,
that. For the good people at
oh yeah.
home, as you don't have my computer screen in front of you, so you're not seeing the $51.458 million that he is guaranteed in cap hit next year, or the 61.458 million the year after that.
Yes,
That's dude.
yes,
Here's the thing I get into. Like, this is where my brain always goes
yes.
back to. I I can almost justify the Dennis Allen thing. You had Sean Payton for such a long time, and he was such
And
a
he was
legacy
good
and a
as
cornerstone
the
of the
defensive
city.
coordinator, all of that type of stuff.
Exactly. And this guy, it maybe behind the doors, this was who Sean said, like, you need to give the keys to this guy. Maybe they watched what happens when Gibbs told them who to give the keys to in Washington, and they picked somebody else. And what happened after that?
Yeah.
And so, like, I get it. You wanted to give it a chance to work out. Why has Mickey Loomis had a job for half a decade?
Um, he was signed into Tom Benson's will as a partial owner of the team. When he passed away, he's and Gail
Are you making
Benson,
that up, or is that real?
um, from all things that I
That's
have read and seen, it is real.
That's that's one of
Um,
those things that, like, you probably only hear about if you're a New Orleans Saints fan. I've never heard anything like that, and it's not like Mickey Loomis doesn't get talked about in national conversations.
yeah. Um, technically, you could move him to some other position um, in the building, but that's not going to happen.
Not if the other shareholders that have a controlling interest don't care enough.
Yeah. Well, there is no other shareholders. It's Gail Benson, and then Mickey Loomis has, you know, a little bit of it, from the will, but it's Gail Benson has autonomy because
Okay.
the Benson family bought it back in '70s or the '80s, something like that. Um, you shout out to her, everything. They own the Pelicans and the Saints, but they removed Mickey Loomis as the GM of the Pelicans a couple of years ago. Um, it's very possible they could do the same thing with the Saints. If things are not turned around, we're going to go through this rebuild. We're going to go through this next 3 years of being bad. If we're not, drafting high end talent during this time period, if he keeps trying to say, I want to like win games immediately, and we're stuck in the 6 and 7 win, hellhole that we've kind of been in the past 4 seasons, then something has to be made regarding, some kind of move has to be made regarding him. But right now, he's going to stay in that position. Hopefully, he will swallow a little pride on some of these contracts he's signed, some of these restructured deals that he's been continuously kicking the can down the road. That's the reason they owe Derek Carr so much money
Yeah.
the next 2 seasons. It's because normally, when they sign the contract, he would be getting paid like, I think it's like 35, $40 million a year. Bad, but not 51 or $61 million.
Right. 40,
Not,
35, $40 million a year for anybody that's like a top 15 quarterback at this point. I think you kind of got to call that
right.
market rate, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, but instead they were like, all right, well, we got Derek Carr in, and they were already, screwed cap wise. So they had to start the restructures and start the restructures. And there's going to be, when this all, I think all of these contracts, the out is going to be 2027 for like all of the older players, and Derek Carr is when they'll be able to move off of these guys.
Okay.
So, once they hit that 2027, and then, there might be some dead money stuff 2028, um, that's when a lot of these moves are gonna that's when hopefully the cap in theory, the cap issues will have been resolved. Um, Now, there's always the real possibility they just go out and start signing guys to other big contracts, and for whatever reason, give Chase Young a big contract to stick around, and they've already extended Alvin Kamara, and Chris Olave is due
Wild.
up. Chris Olave is due
Extending
up for a new.
33-year-old running backs.
Chris Olave is due up for a new contract in a couple of years. So there's going to be money to pass around. You won't have a 50 or $60 million quarterback salary on your books once that is all said and done, but you'll still have other big contracts that you'll be paying out. And the Saints will probably try to draft a quarterback in the first round, something that they have not done since Arch Manning was taken number one overall back in like 1970.
That's impressive. That's no, it's nothing other than impressive that you have actually managed to go 54 years since you took a quarterback in the first round. That's wild. That's the sort of thing that just simply doesn't happen. Right up there with quarterbacks throwing more interceptions and touchdowns and their team being 8-0. Shout out you, Patrick Mahomes. Just kidding. Shout out Steve Spagnuolo. The other real possibility here, though, is like, you're kind of at the point. This feels like 2005 in DC. Not entirely the same, maybe a little closer to 2007. 2005 happened. That was the last time the Redskins were this good. They were 6-2. And quite frankly, that was a Super Bowl contender and should have had some staying power. And that should have been the start, 2005, of Coach Gibbs's opportunity to get a fourth Super Bowl with a fourth different quarterback who probably wasn't going to go to the Hall of Fame and it not even be in a consecutive amount of time. Unfortunately, the Sean Taylor thing happens.
Yeah.
And the wheels come off the wagon and the team finishes 8-8, 10-6. They win a home playoff game. But so much of that roster was built up of not Miami players, and they stopped giving a crap about football. It all falls apart. Coach Gibbs retires again. And the same thing, you've got this money. You didn't keep kicking it down the road as bad, but you started giving guys these big, stupid contracts. Albert Hainsworth happens around this time in the Jim Zorn era. And then they never did what you're talking about. They never let the big reset happen. And I invite you to come hang out in DC if it looks like New Orleans is going to make the same mistake. Because I'm telling you, brother, it doesn't change until ownership does.
Yeah.
Telling you right here.
Yeah. Some things definitely need to happen. The Bears have, have been bad for a really, really long time. People want to blame coach, GM. At the end of the day, some of the ownership people at the top making all of the big decisions need to change. I really just want. I'm fully on board with the rebuild. Um, the team is. I'm aware that the team is going to suck.
It's a question of like, if you know that 2027 is when this money comes off and that's what it's all about for these guys, Loomis and all of them, they are going to have to make some kind of effort to look like they're spending money to try to put butts in seats.
Yeah, no, they're going to, there will be some young guys that get extensions, stuff like that. Chris Olave will get an extension. Rashid Shaheed will probably get some type of extension if his production keeps up. He's, obviously got hurt this season, but if he can continue that production, you have Taliesin Fuaga. Trevor Penning has looked pretty solid this season at right tackle. He might not be worthy of like some crazy deal, but Fuaga has looked really, really good at left tackle. He'll get paid. And, stuff like that, setting up the offensive line, which is what I think they should probably address with maybe their second round pick, maybe even their first, depending on where they ultimately end up falling in this year's draft. That's going to be, really key to whatever you're building long term. Whenever you're able to finally draft that quarterback that can go, man, and really change your franchise. But for right now, you know, suck it up.
Yeah.
Don't, you know,
Y'all
you're
put a
gonna be
trophy over your heads in your lifetime. I mean, so
yeah, yeah. I mean, this team does have a Super Bowl. There are plenty of teams that do not. Um, you know, really just looking at some of these contracts. Um, I mean, Kamara will end in 2027. Cam Jordan, 2027. Demario Davis.
let me guess,
Uh,
2027.
no, he's 2026. I'm going to spot
Ooh,
check real quick.
that almost sounds frugal.
Yeah, that would be crazy, right? Um, yeah. So Jamal Williams, his contract's not really that bad, but Taysom Hill, Jamal Williams, those
What's
guys
what's left on
um,
Taysom Hill's deal?
don't
I
look.
that one's curious because I don't remember how long ago it was, but wasn't it like $140 million contract he signed?
It was it was something crazy. It was like over $100 million, but it was like a lot of it was super incentive based.
Okay.
Like there's a bunch of stuff in there like about like how many passes he throws, how many passing yards he has a season, and like how many games the games played, games used as this and that, and all this other stuff.
So it's
His,
basically a contract that says if the starting quarterback goes down and we elevate you from backup quarterback to starter and you play well, then we'll pay you like a starter.
yeah,
Okay. That's fair.
but he still gets paid like pretty well. Um, there's but next season he'll get paid like $9 million. The season after that, $18 million. He's 34 years old. Um,
He's a gadget player.
yeah, should
He has
never have
7 useful
gotten that.
snaps a season.
Yeah, should never have gotten that contract. But he's
I just want to know
regardless of
what
what you think
pictures of
about
Mickey
it,
Loomis he had on his phone.
yeah. But yeah, the guys that really the 2027 is when the Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr, all of that, all the void years kind of pile on with that. But there's going to be some guys that should be paid, should be worthy of a new contract. Carl Granderson got extended last offseason, deserved
Shout
that.
out.
Um, if like I said, some of those offensive linemen, Paulson Debo's leg got snapped in half during the Denver game, so he'll probably be pretty cheap to bring back.
If you want him.
Um, uh, Someone's got to play.
And you look like you're collecting fifth, sixth, seventh round draft picks, like, candy wrappers and soda pop tabs.
Yeah. No, they don't need to draft any more defensive backs. I mean, they have
Don't you have like 10 corners on your roster?
a lot, but they're all hurt. Every single one of them is hurt. They're hurt or
Fuck the
traded.
MNFI slots.
So it's you just kind of enjoy that. You look at the depth chart and you're like, damn, we have kind of a lot of corners. And then you look at the depth chart for this past Sunday and you go, who the
We
fuck
don't
is
have
that?
anyone.
Who is that? Who is starting? Who is covering Xavier Leggett this Sunday? I have no idea. And
Don't
that's
worry.
kind of
He's catching balls from Bryce Young.
or they're getting ripped out of his hands. You know, but yeah, I mean they got a lot of other issues to address. But once they get some of these gaudy, and they are gaudy
Yes.
contracts off the books.
No, they were bad contracts before they got restructured and kicked down
Yes,
the road.
yes,
Let's make sure that part is set.
yes. They were. Yeah, they were. The players from like I mean, now look. You look at the Ryan Ramczyk trade. He was a Pro Bowler.
Yes.
All pro level guy. Should have gotten paid like a
Yeah.
premier right
That
back.
was a football dice roll. That
Yep.
was how the sport works. It goes that way
Yeah.
sometimes.
Marshawn Lattimore, 4-time Pro Bowler. Pay him. Really, this Saints team has been built upon that 2017 draft class.
Mhm.
with all those players they got. And you look at a bunch of the other guys from that class that are still in the league, and they are absolutely killing it. Trey Hendrickson leading the lead in sacks, Alex Anzalone being a force to be reckoned with for the Detroit Lions, just to name a few. But hey, things are going to get bad before they get better. I'm fully aware of that. Then again, 7 straight losses. Are things going to get that much worse?
No, they're
I
really
don't think
not.
so.
Dude, you started off 2-0. And like
A historic
and like
2-0.
winning by large margins.
Winning by historic margins 2-0. Like, oh my God, are we going to
Yeah.
be playing in the Superdome 3 straight games in the playoffs type of historical margin? And then the wheels. Not only did the wheels fall off the wagon, but the wagon crashed into the river and floated downstream.
The wheel popped off the hub and somehow got up in there and wedged itself in between the camshaft and a cylinder head. All right. The whole motor is done. Okay. Let's be abundantly clear here. And like, I
This
can't
is a safe space.
think of a time that a team in one season, I'm not talking about everything in the grand scheme of things. I myself can't think of a time that a team has given its fan base more whiplash than what this team has done this season.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's the build up first. They're not the worst team I've ever seen, but holy crap, the fall off.
Yeah, well, they started on historical levels, and then 2 really brutal losses
They
back
were
to back
tough.
against the Eagles and the Falcons, and then things kind of slowly trickled downhill. You lose the tough game to the Bucks, where you
Is
just
that the
couldn't
one Rashid
tackle.
got hurt in?
Yeah, and then you go to Kansas City, and you're like, well, everybody loses in Kansas City. Um,
It's a
well,
championship mentality.
Kansas City came before the Bucks, but you're like, well, we don't really know what to expect, and of course, like they're driving down the field, the first drive of the game, Derek Carr throws some really horrible looking pick off his back foot, and you're like, okay, this is how the game's going to go. You get it to within a possession, like at the end of the third, and then the Chiefs just pull away, and you're like, okay, whatever.
That's what they do.
And Derek Carr gets hurt in that game in the fourth quarter when you're down like 2 touchdowns. And you're like, okay, well, now you get Spencer Rattler, who everyone was hoping and praying would come in and look really good. And he's been fine, but he looks
I think he's a
scared.
lot better than people should have expected him to be.
Yeah. Well, he looks scared to make mistakes.
Yes,
And
that's fair.
so he's being extra conservative with the ball instead of just letting it fly. And so that's
And that might be what he's getting coached to do by this staff, because that's not what he was doing
it's
with Shane Beamer. He did it
yeah,
a little bit when he
a
first got
little
to
bit
South Carolina after
because he
everything
was
that
so
happened in
worried. Yeah,
Oklahoma.
yeah.
Yeah,
But then he started just letting it rip, and he was
yeah.
kind of letting it. He was just letting it rip in the preseason when he didn't really have anything to worry about. But they probably brought him in there like, hey, we're just going to need you to keep things straight and narrow. We're going to rely on the defense to win these games. Just take care of the ball, all of this type of stuff, instead of going out there and making plays. And instead, he finishes going. He goes like 16 of 24 for like 175 yards because he's not pushing the ball down the field at all.
And I think that while you can win football games that way, and
Yeah, you can absolutely.
I don't know that Spencer Rattler, if you let him go out there and cut it loose, that he's going to suddenly start slinging it for 400 yards and 3 tutties, But I do think that Spencer Rattler plays with a certain swagger about him, and that he still plays pretty good and well managed football when playing with that swagger and being a little more loose and free. And I think that swagger is contagious. And I'm not, and I granted, he's playing in Columbia with Shane Beamer, okay, and that's just a fun program. But when Spencer Rattler gets juiced up and gets going, you can kind of like feel his entire team take on that energy. And
Yeah,
I think that honestly, this would require, the New Orleans Saints to be aware of what their fan base maybe needs to see from their team. But like, it not only would that be a better football team and more competitive, one playing with that kind of energy, even if it's still going 4-12, probably a little bit more fun to watch for y'all down there.
yeah. No, I'd agree. People don't want to see Derek Carr throw the football. Um,
And I know you do, and I know that's got to be a really tough. You're in
yeah,
so
yeah.
many
No, I
tough
mean,
positions with this team. You're being tested like I was my whole life. All right, like, dude, I get it. Like, we got Clinton Portis in a draft pick for Champ Bailey. That's my favorite player of all time. That's my cornerback. Okay, y'all ain't get shit. You ain't even get the crust off a ham sandwich. Nothing.
all we can hope is that that third round pick turns into something.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what
You
the
mean
draft is
basically
for.
fourth?
Yeah. Well, you know, God forbid FedEx Field jumps up and grabs Jaden Daniels by the Achilles.
Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Don't say it. He
No,
spent no. They spent like $8 million on that field this year.
yeah, no,
There
they're
was
like
more
not
than
worth
one
that.
offseason that Dan had spent in a decade on the turf
Yep.
itself. So like, but you got that going on. You got the team is abysmal to watch going on. And the icing on the cake here is like I really feel for the position you're in. Okay,
Yeah,
your favorite quarterback gets traded to your team. Everyone immediately hates him. That you
he's
can
not.
talk
He's not.
about your
Don't get me wrong. He's not my favorite quarterback.
he's
I like. No, I mean,
you
I
were
like.
enamored with him at the time.
Yeah, I like Derek Carr. Like, I mean, I still like him as a quarterback, as a human being, all of that type of stuff. I thought he was very underrated.
Yes.
Definitely a better quarterback than a lot of people give him credit for. Uh, and especially coming off how things ended with Oakland, I was like, come on, like, bring him and give that guy a chance. We saw what happened with Drew Brees leaving the Chargers. Maybe he can come in and kind of revitalize his career in New Orleans, and that just hasn't been the case.
No, I mean Drew Brees was. I mean Derek Carr at no point in his career has ever been anything close to what Drew Brees was, even just in San Diego. You know. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe. All right, no. He has had his highs. He's had his
Yeah.
highs.
He's
But
had, yeah. I mean, he had
he had the one season,
well, 2016 was good, and then the year they went to the playoffs, he was pretty
really
solid.
good, right up until his leg left the chat.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
happens.
which it's football. It
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
Can't knock the guy for getting his leg snapped, but also at the same time, it's kind of important to not get your leg snapped. It might affect your career long term.
It's
But
true.
not if you're
Well,
Nick Chubb. What
no, he's a stud. Are you
the
ready to move
hell?
out of here?
Yeah. Let's get out of here.
No.
All right. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Behind the Glass Sports. Thank you for indulging us for the extra 13 minutes. We apologize for no call, no showing last week. We'll try to at least call out in the future. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Get ready to watch Tide storm into LSU. And